I'll start crying.
Are you good?
Yeah, let me just dab my fucking eyes one more time. Jesus Christ.
I love it.
We're going to have to do a disclaimer. I'm not crying because I'm here. A little bit. I'm sobbing that I'm the first guest, so I've just been very, very emotional. No, it's because apparently I'm allergic to mascara, so just if you see me dabbing, I could be crying because—
The edit I'm going to make is just that you're so emotional because we have such an incredible conversation, and that's going to be all that people see. And I'm just going to cut this part out about the mascara, so.
No, Emily said something so profound, and you just cut to me being like—
I personally love it. I'm very sorry that you have that. New York gives me allergies. I don't know if it's your mascara.
It's something, but we're crying today. But I feel all the feels, so we're just going to pretend it's because I'm in your presence. And
we're
so
just
happy
emotional.
To be— We're just emotional. Congrats on your show. This is amazing.
Thank you so much. Hello, Alex Cooper. Welcome to High Low with EmRata. Girl, you are the queen of podcasting. It's why I have you here as my first guest.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored. Your set is so cute. I feel cozy.
I was trying to think about who I wanted for a first guest. And, you know, I told you this when I first started thinking about having a podcast. Like, I reached out to you right away because I admire you so much and what you've done and how you do it. And yeah, you're the EP creator, host of Call Her Daddy. Like, it's you. And people don't even realize that you edit a lot of the stuff, right? Like, what's your background with that?
So I started like writing and producing and directing it and then being the host. And I'm fortunate that like through my deal and the success, I've been able to obviously have a larger team around me. But the team is really just to help. I'm still a psycho. Like, there's no doubt about it. Like, even someone's trying to edit, I'm like, it's just not what I want. So here, why don't you just scooch over? And
I relate.
I do respect everyone on my team so much. And I have found so many great people that come in and help me, but I'm definitely still 100% hands-on because I don't think Call Her Daddy would be what it is if I just stepped away from it. So it's important for me to still have my hands on everything.
Yeah, and your POV, like, that's what makes the show special.
Totally.
But you started editing in high school.
Yeah, I was like a complete nerd, like obsessed with— it was actually before high school I started editing, and I was obsessed with editing.
With like iMovie? Like, I need to understand.
It was actually Movie Maker. Shout out to anyone that was a techie back then. Nobody watching this is probably a techie. They're like, we have no idea what that is. But I was obsessed with Movie Maker, and I would like cut these really embarrassing clips of myself. But I was just obsessed with it, which I now know was a good thing, I guess, because it's helped me in my career. But at the time, it wasn't cool. Like, people would be like, what are you doing?
It's like you were like built to do this or something. Like, everything about, you know, your personality, who you, like your intelligence, obviously, but then you have these really specific skills that are,
Thank you. No, it's definitely
Teach me your
helped
ways.
We're going to have an editing session together, Emily, and you're going to be cutting your promo clips.
I'm the same way as you, though. I really like to be hands-on. Like, I do all my own social media. And actually, it was funny when I started podcasting with Sony, they were like, so who edits your reels and TikToks? And I was like, I do. I took advanced video film in high school.
Okay, hold on.
No. I wasn't like you were in your basement, like editing away. I wasn't that committed.
You're making me sound so creepy. Like, you were in the basement. I was in a film class.
I'm creepy because I know this. No. I'm creepy because I know you took like 4 years of editing in high school.
Yeah, I was like obsessed. I didn't have to take health, which is why it's so funny. I always say, like, I didn't take a sex ed class. I just begged and begged my professors to let me just do video production. And I was like, I promise one day you'll be proud. And hopefully they are. I don't know if they even follow me.
You should check in.
I should check in.
They definitely are proud. My dad's a high school teacher, and I know for sure that like when somebody like makes it, and especially if you were the teacher, like he was an art teacher. So if somebody like works in art, he's like, he follows them religiously. It's like their child. It's like his child.
Well, I'm just grateful that I like went to a high school that had that. And it's been very helpful for my career.
Ugh. All right. So there's so many things I want to talk to you about today. Okay, I want to backtrack a little bit. We got to go to the beginnings of Call Her Daddy. And I'm thinking about this because we're talking about being self-aware and perception and growing up with social media. What age were you when you started recording Call Her Daddy?
I think it was 2018. So that was 4 years ago. So 23 into 24.
That's so young.
I was so young.
Period. I was so young.
Yeah. It was very spur of the moment, and it just took off in a way that I didn't anticipate it to.
Right.
So I wasn't really prepared.
So I told you I listened to early episodes and, you know, I had known, okay, don't shake your head.
You're just backstabbing me. No, I'm just kidding.
No. First of all, no. Okay, I'm gonna preface this. Let's go back a little bit. My early career stuff, when I was like 20, whatever, there are things I am mortified that you can still, it's still like the top 10 Google images is something that I shot when I was 20, 21. Obviously, blurred lines. Anytime somebody brings that up, I'm like, whatever. You had such a personal outlet. Like I remember I had in high school and like my first year of college, I had a blog spot. Throwback.
Where is it now?
It's been deleted. I've managed to break in and delete everything. But I remember seeing it even just 3 years later. I was like, what? I started it when I was 19. I went on when I was like 22. And I was like, delete all of this. I can't believe this exists. So you have that, but you can't delete it. It's your voice. It exists in the world forever. What's that like?
It's strange. I'm not like an absolute psycho. Like it's very strange, I would say. I think at first, I don't know what it is, and I think I need to talk to my therapist about this, but there was never a moment for me content-wise and publicly that I had a hard time being open on the internet. It just never fazed me. I remember.
The same way.
Right?
I have talked to my therapist about this
Okay,
too.
great. So we can, your therapist can send me a little letter and explain it to me because I think there's something about feeling safe, sure, that you at first don't have to, you know, face your problems in front of someone. You can just say it and then close your eyes and hope for dear life that people respond to it in a positive way. But I do think there was something about Call Her Daddy that felt very comfortable to me, even though to the world it seemed very uncomfortable that I was talking about sex so explicitly. But I remember when I filmed the 3rd episode of Call Her Daddy, which is one of the most famous episodes.
It's the one I listened to last night.
Okay, the Gluck Gluck 9000.
I wasn't going to say it, but I'm down.
And so I remember so many people were like, oh my God, like, what does your dad think? And my mom over there was like, well, I'm also her mother. Like, why do you always go for the dad? And it's like, oh, because everyone's misogynistic and it's just whatever. But I remember I was really not nervous at all. And I was like, is there something wrong with me? But I think it's just because I was confident in the message that I was really trying to put out, which was to make women and men just feel empowered to have a conversation about sex that I really didn't feel like was being had, especially in the millennial space. I was like, there's no one really having open conversations about sex that's fun, raunchy, raw. Like I just felt like I can have these conversations with my girlfriends in college and they're so funny. And I mean, I'm sure you have them, but
100%.
Then online I was like, there's a lack of information that makes you feel safe and comfortable with sex. And so I don't know. I think when I look back at my younger self, of course there's things that I cringe. I'm like, why did you say that, Alex? What were you going through that day that you thought it was appropriate to say that? But if anything, it wasn't more about myself. It was if I ever spoke on anyone else is what I'm having more of an issue with moving forward, just taking the note for myself of like, maybe you don't shit talk people that you don't know what they're going through. Right. And that also just comes with time and experience and age. Yeah, exactly.
Wisdom.
But no, I like cringe a little bit at my voice. I was doing this whole like, hi, I'm Alex from Call Her Daddy, bitch. And I'm like,
by the way, I love it.
It's a great character.
When I listened to it the other night, I was like, this is amazing. It's so funny too, just to hear you say how intentional what you were doing was and how quickly people would be able to write off a blonde 23-year-old woman and be like, she's an idiot. What is her dad going to think? What's her mom going to think? And then you're like, catch me in a few years. It's like the Jessica Simpson phenomenon where it's like she knew exactly the character she was playing. Like Paris Hilton, same thing. And like the bimbo phenomenon, like in the way that people just disregard women so easily. And you knew you were in complete control. You're like, hello, there's white space here.
Totally.
This is something and I'm willing to do it. I don't give a fuck.
Well, I think that's what frustrated me too was obviously in the beginning, people really tried to pigeonhole me as like the girl that's really good at giving blowjobs. And I'm like, thank you.
That's
yeah,
fire.
absolutely.
I was going to say, what a fire thing to add to your resume.
Right. But also it's like, but I'm running a business and I'm not all just sex. And I felt it was hard, definitely, to try to transition out of that period, but I don't regret it at all.
Yeah.
I think that what Call Her Daddy early days, it was incredible. And I really do think that it was so liberating to be able to have conversations openly about sex. And it frustrated me that men can openly talk about it. And it's like, oh, that's so cool. Like, that's so mysterious. And then women, it's like, you're a fucking whore. You're a slut. And I was like,
well, no one doesn't take them seriously if they then talk about sex, right? Like, it's like, oh, yeah, of course. You're just locker room talk. Like,
you're just a man. Listen, again, so grateful for how Call Her Daddy started, but there is no denying that there was definitely a very long period of time where I tried to transition the show, and there was so much pushback, not from my audience. It was really from media being like, she's the sex girl. And I mean, not to call anyone out, but my publicist even like has had conversations with magazines, and they're like, we will give her like in the magazine multiple pages, but I don't think we're ready for a cover because I don't think the world's ready for that because she still really embodies sex.
I'm so pissed for you.
And it's like, really?
What you've done in this space is like, it's amazing. Nobody else has done it.
Thank you.
You are a pioneer.
Thank you.
And for people to be slow to give you respect and basically be afraid, and because they want to put you in this one kind of box as like a slutty girl. I mean, a mutual friend. And I was talking to him yesterday, and I was like getting really excited. And he was like, you know, something I was thinking about you guys, which I think I'm still in the process of doing, but you've done so well, is transition, like pivot. As it's hard for any person to do that in a public space. I think it's particularly hard for young women. And I have the stats. It's like what you had 60-40 women, men back in 2018. Now it's 90% women listening to you. That's right. I'm so sorry. Round of applause.
It. All the girlies.
All the girlies.
I love it.
It's for the girls only.
It is.
But you have transitioned. I watched your Roe v. Wade episode where you went to North Carolina, and it's so powerful. And you're a really gifted interviewer, but you're really smart. And putting yourself in that situation, I was like, she's a journalist. Like, she's a really smart journalist. No, I mean it genuinely. And like, is it so surprising that she can talk about blowjobs and be incredibly entertaining, talking about like facials and whatever else, and then also do that? Like, what's so confusing about that?
I agree with you. I think when even going back to what you said earlier of like men can have the conversation about it and it's expected and it's normal and women can't, I think there is definitely something of the world we live in is trying to suppress the opportunity of women being equal to men. And so we are deemed as the sexual beings. We have the sexual body parts. We're looked at as sexy. And so God forbid we normalize having the conversation and we're equal and we can just shoot the shit as well. I'm not having sex every single day of the week 100 times. Like, I have different things about me. I love sex. I do love men. I love my boyfriend. But there's also parts of me that I felt I wasn't being able to embrace and explore creatively in the business space because people wanted me to stay in she's the sex girl. I think the Roe v. Wade episode was a moment for me to show Call Her Daddy. We can have fun one week and we can also talk about really important topics that the whole premise really of it was, of course, abortion was at the forefront, but I would say the ethos behind it was the feeling of we are not equal to men. Yeah. That is a fact.
Like, let me go and prove it on the ground. Let me show you what it's like to not have control over your body.
Absolutely. And I think that was an eye-opening moment because I wasn't trying to convince anyone to like go vote or do this. It was really just like, hey guys, let's just watch what's going on. And I appreciate the audience that I have for being so open because I know it was a little different than what I usually do. And it was pretty heavy. Yeah. But I do think that I have a responsibility to shed light on that. And that was, I think, for me in my career, a very cool moment because for the first time in a very long time, the headlines shifted. And it was, of course, like Alex Cooper gets political, where I was like, okay, if that's the headline, fine. But it finally wasn't mentioning the sex and this and that. Yeah. And it was refreshing. And I appreciated being looked at in a different light.
I hope that we can live in a world, maybe we will eventually because of what you're doing, where you're able to do a podcast about blowjobs and then the next talk about a really important political topic.
I agree.
Because that's reality, right? Like in the morning you have morning sex and then you read the news and you get pissed off about something. And then you have a smart conversation with your friend and then later you like put on a slutty dress.
Yes.
That is, to me, part of my reality.
Chef's kiss.
But I mean, a lot of, and we talked about this a little bit ahead of recording this, a lot of the kind of accusations that I've been thrown about that, like I'm recently single. I like wore this like fun little slutty dress out. It was actually, I thought it was quite chic. It was see-through.
You looked amazing. I saw it.
Thank you so much.
I was stalking. I saw it.
Thank you so much. I was like at that party for an hour. It wasn't like I was like whatever, but it was so fun. My girlfriend works for the brand that had the dress. She got it sent over. I was like, can I put it on? And I was like, can I do this? Can I leave the house like this? And then I was like, I'm feeling myself. This is so fun. You know, I'm 31. I had a baby 16 months ago. Like it's it's been a year and a half now. He's getting so old. It felt really good. And then all of a sudden, like I got all these, well, first of all the headlines were like, Emily Ratajkowski wears her most scandalous dress. Like instead of, talking about the TikTok I just posted that was talking about something serious or about the podcast and what I might be dealing with. And then there was this real response of like, how can she expect us to take her seriously while she also parades her body around like that. And it's something that I've heard forever. But I've just basically been accused of having like extreme internalized misogyny and playing into the male gaze. And it's something that I basically wrote my book about. So shout out anybody who wants to get into it. You can read my book. But I mean, it's something I think about all the time. That's why I wrote my book, for nuance, like for the ability to be like, this is source material that has so many different elements to it. And it's a conversation.
Yes. I'm not interviewing you, but I did want to know how does that make you feel when you see those comments about you on the internet and headlines essentially objectifying you and trying to pigeonhole you into she's still just the sex girl that's hot?
If I'm being totally honest, I feel shame. I feel bad about myself. I feel like I shouldn't have worn that dress. Like it was a mistake and I feel ashamed.
And how did you feel when you were wearing the dress?
Great. I had so much fun. I was with all of my girlfriends who were just like hyping me up, like taking videos, being like, do you want me to post this? And then I'll put, I'm single. Course. It's fun. And like, it feels really good to have your friends be like, yes, bitch. You know what I mean? So I felt really great, but I knew what was coming. So like I got home and I was like, well, that was fun. But even when I put it on, like I had this moment of like, do I wear this? Like, is this, I sent it to my friend. I was like, am I allowed? Which was a joke, but also it wasn't a joke.
I think that for you, yes, there's no denying that like the world started to know Emily Ratajkowski, we can just call it as it is like this hot, beautiful, sexy, incredible woman.
Thank you.
But then there was depth underneath that. I think that honestly, even just as a viewer and consumer, like I notice it that people really try to suppress of like, no, we don't want to hear what you have to say. Just actually wear the dress, but then just don't.
But that's the parallel with you, right? People are like, Alex Cooper, you're so fun when you talk about blowjobs and like group chats and all the things that we talk about privately, and you're just willing to say it. Like, do more of that and don't talk about serious issues or anything outside of that.
I think that people have a hard time believing that women, especially women that are going to go there and feel sexually liberated, they have a hard time believing that we can be multifaceted. And they don't appreciate us straying from the norm.
What would you rather have Alex Cooper or Emily Ratajkowski do? You'd rather us just continue to like only do whatever, just to talk about blowjobs and me to just like wear bikinis? How does that make sense to anyone? How is that progressive?
I think they do. I think there's a lot of people that do want that.
Yeah.
And then I think
there's women too who want that.
Yes.
What you just said made me think about evolution and like contradictions, and you have put yourself out there so much through the years and kind of been able to navigate that and grow a fan base. And Daddy Gang, we love Daddy Gang.
Shout out Daddy Gang.
Proud member of Daddy Gang. I have to say, by the way, when I did book press, this is like a side note, you were watching the Daddy Gang rally was so impressive. And just, I was like, oh, she's a genius.
They're amazing.
And like, you have built something so impressive. But I guess what I just wanted to talk to you about is like, what is that like to evolve your opinions and have personal growth on a public stage, and sometimes like walk something back that you felt really firmly, I really personally believe in that. I think it's so important to say, I was wrong about this. And that's something that I've done, especially around my politics and around feminism, where I'm like, okay, this is why I said this in this moment. I don't necessarily completely disagree with it now, but it's grown. My feelings and my opinions about this thing have grown.
I used to say things in my podcast that I wouldn't say I don't agree with, but I think I've said things in my past that don't align with where I'm at now because I've grown, I've matured, I've had more experiences. Are there things I've said in my past that I'm like, Alex?
Who is that not true for?
Of course. And
everyone feels that way.
That's why I hope that people can have a little bit more grace, especially everyone moving forward is mostly going to be on social. We have Gen Z, the next generation, and we weren't built to be spewing our thoughts publicly. Every single person on the planet, I dare you to DM me if you haven't, has talked shit on someone. Mm-hmm. That's a fact. It's just innately in us. We are like just comparing ourselves to human beings. Sure, does it come from a place of insecurity? Whatever, I don't give a shit. You've talked shit. Mm-hmm. But when you have this public platform now that people are on, and there's so many positives to it, but I don't think my younger self, I didn't know what I was doing. I've talked shit on celebrities back in my past, and I've walked into rooms with them and been like, I'm so sorry. Like, it's embarrassing, right. But that the person that's made that comment didn't know the celebrity at the time, or it doesn't even have to be a celebrity. The person didn't have an understanding and also was probably just insecure and just trying to make noise because I was talking on the internet and wanted something to say. So I think the contradictions are, hey, 1 year ago, I said I would never get political on my podcast. 2 weeks ago, I just released an episode about Roe v. Wade. That's a contradiction, right? But I think it's actually a contradiction in my mind. Listen, if you're completely contradicting yourself and you're saying one thing that's so outrageous and outlandish, and the next day you're like, I never said that. I'm like with this. And you're like, that's not appropriate.
I don't think it's a contradiction. I think that's evolution.
That's what I'm saying.
And personal growth.
There's the blatant moments where you're like, okay, you got to hold yourself accountable. You just said this. Like, can you talk about it?
Yes.
I think for me, it's more like I am growing. And I genuinely meant that. A year ago, I didn't want to get involved with politics because I wasn't educated enough on it that I felt comfortable to speak on it. And I think that's something that I've definitely evolved into in my career, is not making such quick comments on things that I don't have an understanding of. And if you asked me to have a conversation about Roe v. Wade a year ago, I would have probably slid back and hid behind people that knew what they were talking about, because I appreciate the responsibility that I have on my platform, and I don't want to talk about something that I'm not educated on.
Yeah.
Sure, I don't know everything still about, if you ask me every single date, Roe v. Wade, 1973, like I know some of it. But I think it's more just the contradiction comes from growth and an interest in learning and then change. And now, I am interested in politics. I'm 28 years old. When I was 24, I wanted to hook up with boys, drink beer, look cute, and have a good time.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. And I think it's important to let women know that.
I think it's really important also what you're saying about politics. Like, something that bothers me kind of about the left and like Democrats is that there's just this feeling of like, you need to know all your facts. You need to be like reading the New York Times every day and like checking in on DC in order to have a political opinion or to be quote unquote political. That's not true. And I think that it turns people off to being engaged politically or even having opinions, because they're like, I can't even dip a toe. It seems like such a mess. And it's like, honestly, it's just about what you feel. And yes, there's levels to education, and it's important to educate yourself as much as you can. But I think what you're saying is actually really important, because there are a lot of people who are disengaged politically, and they have a lot of shame around that. And we do a lot of work to shame them. And that's not helpful for anyone.
It's not helpful at all. And I think I have publicly said it. Like, if you asked me 4 years ago, I voted because my dad was like, Alex, vote. Like, I was just not in a place where I was out of college. Like, I was like, I don't care. Like, am I actually going to make a difference? And I wasn't educated on the topic. And I used to be ashamed of that. And now I'm realizing as I've evolved of like, hold on. Now that I have a little bit better of an understanding, the issue is it's made to feel like such a grown-up thing. Like, they make it so confusing. And I'm not ever telling people who to vote for. It's actually just, hey, you have a voice. You have such power on that day when everyone's voting. The least powerful and the most powerful are equal. And so why not enjoy that and partake in it? And so I think what's happened is they've made it the scary, confusing thing of voting. And it's meant to be such an adult thing of once you're in your 40s and 50s, you'll understand how to vote and you'll understand where to go. And it's like, yeah, but all of this is affecting all of us. Yeah. So an 18-year-old girl right now in Texas can't get a legal abortion. So she should be voting. That affects her, not just the 40-year-olds and not just the 50-year-olds. So I think it's actually not, the word isn't dumbing it down, but what I've tried to do is make it less scary of like,
less intimidating.
It's okay if you're someone, I mean, so many people messaged me after the Roe v. Wade and they were like, I'm so embarrassed, but I know you're not going to judge me. Like, I'm 30 and I just registered to vote because of that episode. And I'm like, do not be embarrassed. Don't be embarrassed. Yeah. You're now partaking in the conversation. What is embarrassing and what you should be ashamed of is if you have all of these opinions and you're pissed and you're not voting. Then you don't get an opinion. Take part.
Yeah, I think there's like an elitism that surrounds like politics that really sucks. And I want that to change so badly. It's something that I like hope to do with the podcast eventually, where you can have political ideas be, you know, invested in ethics and how you think the world should work and not have to be like, and I know exactly the name of the senator who ran in this history and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, not feel afraid to voice your opinion. Because I do think that's like, I remember just in high school, the like speech and debate kids being like, well, do you know the history of da-da-da? And you'd be like, shit, no, you know? And especially as a woman, I think it's really scary, the idea of somebody being like, you don't know your shit.
It's awful. And it's also just, they're just trying to put you down and scare you away from the conversation that they definitely don't want you to be a part of. And I do think there's something about growing up and having a voice for yourself is very empowering. But I do think like, listen, I personally think that 4 years ago, there was obviously such a divide in the country with our president at the time. And I think it was very like Republicans are the devil in view of the Democrats and we could get all into it, but we're not going to. The point is I don't think both sides are completely like bad. Like we have to actually look at it and be like, listen, I understand that's the world. We're not all going to agree.
Well, also point of view and people's perspectives of like where they live, what
where
kind
you were raised.
Yeah.
Totally. And I want to be respectful of that because I understand there are some people that, Alex, please don't talk about politics. I mean, for my Roe v. Wade episode, I was begged by some people like, just don't do it. Like, why are you getting into this? And I felt it was actually more, and I mean, my listeners can give me feedback, but I really tried to keep it, it's not neutral, but it's just, let's just watch. Let's just watch what's happening in North Carolina, the experience for a woman to get an abortion. Let's just watch, whether you're pro-life, whether you're pro-choice. And the best thing, not that I was trying to change people's minds, but hopefully I'm producing thought-provoking enough material that maybe that does happen. And it did happen where I had a lot of women write in and say, oh my gosh, I live in the South. My whole life I was raised pro-life. And I watched this and I realized, I guess I am pro-choice. I'm pro-life for myself. I personally don't believe in abortion through my religion, through my upbringing. But I realized, but that's not to say that I don't think another woman could make a different decision. Wow. And it was really incredible to see the shift of so many people in my DMs coming together of like, you know what? It doesn't need to be that we're all up against each other. There is common ground we can find. And again, so you are pro-choice. If you believe, let them do their thing. Let me do my thing. I thought it was really profound just to have someone that was super Christian acknowledging like, I actually disagree with what I was raised on. And thanks for letting me. And again, I wasn't asking for them to
Right.
change, just listen. So I appreciate when people come into content with open minds. That's all I'm really asking. And I'm really not judging people. I understand there's deep rooted beliefs, especially based off of how you were raised, that I'm not trying to ask you to change your opinion. It's really just to understand and listen.
But that's why you're a journalist.
I'm not,
Sorry.
I'm a
Sorry.
podcaster.
No, I don't think that's true. I mean, maybe
Thank
that's
you.
like a fancy word or something,
Thank
but
you.
that is really true.
Thank you.
I'm going to shift the conversation a tiny bit. We're
Let's
going to
shift.
come back after this break. I'm going to bother you about men and sex. This is so fun.
great, right?
I want to talk to you all the time.
Wait, this is great,
Will you
right?
continue to just do
Let's
this with
just
me?
sit here.
I'm like, uh-oh, looks like my first 3 episodes are actually just Alex and I having an extended conversation where we cover everything
Fully.
from Gluck 9000 or 3000.
3,000 and 9,000, it's different because
Okay.
the 3,000 is a little less
Intense.
it's like the hands are going the same position, both hands, and then the 9,000 is both hands are going in different positions.
Thank you so much for clarifying. Revisit.
God
Do you have like
bless 'em.
copyrighted that? You should copyright that.
It's actually on Urban Dictionary, and I do have it trademarked.
I love that you have it trademarked. Genius.
You have to do it. You have to do
That's
it.
so, again, smart as fuck. We've talked a lot about how your career has pivoted and how your point of view has changed, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the personal, obviously, whatever you feel comfortable with. Like men and sex. Like you're 28 years old. You know, you have a boyfriend. You keep it really private, which I really respect and admire, honestly.
Thank you.
But where are you at with like men and sex? How you feeling about it? What
Currently, I actually have never felt better about it.
Okay.
I think I've never been more comfortable with myself. That I am realizing I've never been more sexually confident in myself. And I don't mean that like, so I'm doing headstands while I'm getting fucked. Like, no, it's actually, I feel more confident to like, I hate using this word with sex, but like advocate for myself in the bedroom and know what I want. And I feel very empowered within myself that I'm able to not fake things and not feel forced to play along and appease the man while I'm not even getting off. And I think my relationship to sex has definitely, it's been an evolution. That's the word of the day. Because again, like I said, when I was younger, I was super insecure and I wanted the male validation. So when I was having sex, I did not really begin to actually enjoy exploring my sexuality until I would say college, but then after college, I was like, did I even explore in college compared to now where I am? And I'm like, now am I first exploring? Like, because I think there's this shame. I was raised Catholic. So sex to me was, you're literally going to die and go to hell if you have sex before marriage. Then I broke that quickly and I was like, okay, I'm still alive. Like, this is good. And then I think my relationship to sex and men was not enjoying it and faking it and being like, oh, like I have to have sex with him today because, and it was just more of a feeling of trying to play this part. And then when I started Call Her Daddy, I will be honest, it fucked my sex life up. I was so mentally fucked up because I would walk into a room and everyone is expecting this crazy sexual deviant. And then I literally announced the Gluck 9000. And then every time I would hook up with a new guy, I knew he was kind of like,
let's go.
Let's see what
You
it
have to-
is.
like the performance was even 10
Totally.
times expectation
yeah.
wise.
And so then I almost like as a defense mechanism, because I got so uncomfortable and I was awkward. Like, what if I don't live up to what they think it's going to be?
Yeah.
I would be like, oh, you don't get that yet. Like, you'll get it. But it was more to, but it was
so
more to,
stressful.
yeah. So it was it was convoluted in the sense that I was in my head about being self-objectified by myself, of talking about sex and being this sexual being, but then not even feeling like a sexual being because I felt like I had to just do the steps that I created in my podcast. I was so happy that I had helped all these millions of women get out there and learn how to give a great BJ and enjoy sex and get off and masturbate. But I was
feel confident.
I was like, wait, but guys, now my sex life sucks. So I had to work on, in therapy, rebuilding my sexual identity and my relationship to my sex sex life of actually enjoying it and not doing it for performative. Like it got so crazy that I would be having sex and in my head being like, what did I just do? I need to talk about that on the next episode. I did this thing with my tongue.
You're a workaholic
I'm like, Alex, you're in the middle of having sex
You're
with
not
someone,
even enjoying it.
And then afterwards I would like write in my notes and I'm like, this is getting way too undercover. Like I'm like in there on the job. But no, now I've come to a place where I've really worked on separating sex from my career, which sounds so fucking weird. I don't know how many people can say that, but sex from my career in terms of what is Alex Cooper, the 28-year-old businesswoman, friend, daughter, partner, how do I enjoy sex?
Yeah.
And now
how does that fit into your life?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm fortunate to have such a supportive partner of my career that I think that also helps, where he's like so impressed by me and supportive that it's just like a prerequisite of the relationship of supporting each other, that I don't feel like if I don't want to have sex on Sunday, I'm not going to just do it because I'm like, oh, but he thinks he's dating the caller daddy girl. I'm not doing that anymore. So it feels nice. And now I feel like my sex life is better than ever because I'm just like, I can relax.
I'm so sorry you had to go through that.
I
mean, I can only imagine like feeling like this, like performance anxiety. And I think what's really hard about, there's somehow this confusion between basically whore and sexually liberated. And it's really complicated. And I think maybe I'll do a monologue on that because I think it's interesting, like thinking about that and how men think about that and taking charge.
But do you get nervous to hook up with guys? Like you're Emily Ratajkowski. You're so fucking hot. What if you have an off day? Are you nervous? You're gonna be like, she wasn't that good in the bedroom. And
of course, every person I think has that. But then when you have this like personality or this caricature of yourself that exists in the world. But I also try not to engage with men who are interested in that caricature. And you can tell that very quickly. I'm sure you can too. Like I'm like, if I get even just a little bit of a whiff of like, oh, EmRata though, you're EmRata. I'm like, okay, like we're going to stop
You're
this
like,
right
I'm
now.
dried up now and I can't.
Yeah. I think it's hard though.
It is hard too. And I would just like to say to all the women listening, like I remember in college even, I wasn't, public in my persona. No one knew me other than my college friends. And there was still the fear of, oh, I'm like the girl on the soccer team with the blonde hair and the guys think I'm hot now. And what if are they going to talk about how bad I was if I was like drunk or I wasn't in the mood or whatever? And so I think as a woman, there's the pressure to try to enjoy the sex, which is so much harder than men can. It takes us so much longer to have an orgasm. And so if you're with a new partner, it's
more different depending on every woman's body varies so much how they orgasm.
And then it's like, and then on top of that, if you're with a new partner, you're not going to be like, hey, like, could you go down there for 20 minutes and just try to like get me warmed up? Because you're going to come before I even get horny. So let's try. And then on top of that, I think there's then the shame of like, what are they going to say? And so what happens, I think, is a lot of times girls just go through the motion of having sex and they're not enjoying it. And that breaks my heart. But I also know it's a process and each individual has to go through it and find their wavelength of like, this is how I enjoy sex. But I do think for especially young women in like college and high school, if you are hooking up with someone that you're nervous that they're going to talk to their boys about you, it's not a safe place to be having sex with that person. Correct. Because you need to protect yourself and your sexual identity and your wants and your needs. And you're going to be fearful to even engage and let yourself have fun and explore and feel open to whatever happens in the moment if you're more focused on him and what he's going to do afterwards. And I think it's so much easier said than done.
Totally.
But it's just something to keep in your head.
Yeah. Sex should be play time. It should be just fun and enjoyable in a way that it so often isn't, because there are power dynamics at play and because of the world we live in. And yeah, I just...
Well, that's why I say everyone needs, ladies, masturbate, because the more that you know yourself and the more that you are so in tune with what you want in your body, like I will admit that I was not doing that, and I was waiting for a man to give me an orgasm, which I was like, I think I'll be waiting till I'm dead if that's going to happen. Like,
straight up.
Take matters into my own hands. And so I think for anyone listening, I really do encourage, like, I know people get all awkward about it, but it's like, get yourself a vibrator and have some alone time, because then you are going to enjoy your sex more if you're able to know, like, oh, I like this about myself. If you're trying to find it through the man, it's not going to happen, because there's so many things on top of it that you're stressed about.
Yeah.
And your sexual pleasure is actually usually on the bottom, and that's not your fault. It's actually more just like, again, the society that we were raised in.
Yes.
Is he pleased? Did he come? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like,
well, and it's so scary to be bossy. I read a statistic that said that in heterosexual hookups, the first time a man and woman hook up, 7% of the time a woman has an orgasm. 7%.
7%.
That's such a low number.
Shout out to you guys, because I'm not in that percentage. I was not.
Yeah, 7%. I mean, I also think that's like anatomically, like there's so many factors that come into that. I think being bossy is so important, and just communicating, over communicating. I get why that's scary, because that is not typically associated with being feminine and being sexy. Is a woman who's like, move a little to the right, do this. Okay, now I want you to do that, whatever. You got to get over it. And if that man doesn't like it, then he has no business being down there.
I was going to say, I think he actually is definitely 100% super insecure if he's not open to that. But you can actually make him secure, because then all of a sudden you say, oh, that's right. Thank you for taking the note. And now that feels good. Take the note.
To make the note is the other.
Just a little to the left. You're not on my clit. You're on my butthole. And let's move it up. Okay? It's just a little bit of direction goes a long way.
Take the note.
And I get it can be scary, but they're always saying shit. If you're giving them head, they're like, do this, do that.
Faster, slower.
Yes. Sometimes I think men are so terrified down there. They're like, what is that?
Yeah.
And just let them know what it is. But again, it's knowing your own body so you can feel confident to be like, that's not what I like.
Well, that's step one, is figuring out your own body, what makes you feel good. And then second is having the ability to communicate it.
Yeah.
And feeling confident in that.
Absolutely.
Wow. I love that we're going to end on this note.
I do think my last point that I was thinking about is like, because I know everyone that will listen to this, like, there can be anything you take from it. Hopefully you take all the good. But I do feel like in order for change to happen and for women to feel confident and feel like we're getting a little closer to being equal, we have to have conversations like this. We're not trying to complain. We're not trying to, be defensive or I don't know how people would take it, but I do think it's important to have these conversations. Like we said, we can have fun, we can talk about sex, but I do think it's good to have these type of conversations. And I don't know, I think sometimes people can get turned off by them if you don't have the right mindset, but we're really coming from a place of talking about our own experiences and wanting people to just take us seriously in multiple assets of our life, and it's felt like we can't. So I think I love sitting down with you, because you definitely embody someone that people want you to stay in a lane. And I appreciate, look at you. You're in your own fucking studio right now.
Thank
bitch.
you.
I mean,
that's honestly, it's the title of the podcast, High Low with EmRata, because to me, it's all one and the same. Talking about what happens in the bedroom, woman to woman, and talking about political issues as a woman, it's all the same to me. I don't really see the difference. I understand why people see it as highbrow, lowbrow, whatever. This is trashy, this isn't. To me, it's all about communication, and that's radical, and that's how change happens. So I cannot thank you enough for being my first guest. I so enjoyed talking to you. I feel like we should just
keep it moving.
Part 2. Going. Part 2, part 5. I love talking to you. Again, I don't want to be gushy, but I just admire you so much, and I can't wait to see what you do next with your life and with your podcast.
So much, Emily. I'm honored to be your first guest. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming.
We did it!